Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to my English class. I'm Anurita, and today we have a wonderful poem in store. We are going to do Birches by Robert Frost, which is a very important poem in your syllabus and a beautiful poem that has made a very distinct impression on many people. So before we start the text of the poem, let us learn a little bit about the author, the poet, Robert Frost. Robert Frost was born in 1874 and was an American poet whose work was initially published in England before it was published in America. Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime, receiving 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He also delivered a poem at the inauguration of President John F. Kennedy, who remarked about him, "He has bequeathed his nation a body of imperishable verse from which Americans will forever gain joy and understanding." For his poems, Frost developed an original modern idiom and a sense of directness and economy. He maintained that a poem begins as a lump in the throat, a sense of wrong and homesickness and a loneliness. It is never a thought to begin with. It is at its best when it is a tantalizing vagueness. Frost enriched his style by setting traditional meters against the natural rhythms of speech. His poems frequently employ settings from rural life in New England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. What we can understand from these 2 introductory paragraphs about Robert Frost is that he was an American by birth, but first his poems came into being. His poems came to be known and read in England, England of Europe. And the wonderful thing is that he belonged to New England as well, which is a part of America. Robert Frost was an extremely renowned poet. His works were such wonderfully impressing people. His works had such a wonderful impression upon people. His works had a profound impact on the kind of society that existed in the early 20th century as well as today. That even the President of America considered him to be a gem, a star of America. He complimented him by saying that a person like Robert Frost will always have an indelible mark on society and its readers. As far as his style of writing is concerned, Robert Frost was very, very convinced that a poem begins with an emotion. He was an emotional poet, a sensitive person, like most poets are. But with him, he was of the belief that whenever there is a very strong emotional drive within, that emotional drive takes on and can be expressed in the form of a poem. And that is what he exactly did. Whenever he felt the drive in emotion, he put his words in poems. The poem Birches is written in blank verse with a particular emphasis on the sound sense. In writing the poem, Frost was inspired by his childhood experience of swinging on birches, which was a popular form of play for children in rural areas. The rural areas we are talking about here are the American countryside or villages. In the poem, the act of swinging on birch trees is presented as a way to escape harsh rationality or the truth of the adult world. If only for a moment, though he can climb to a place where his imagination can be free, a swinger is grounded in the earth through the roots of a tree. The narrator in the poem feels a sense of regret that as an adult, he is unable to leave his responsibilities behind and climb towards heaven until he can start afresh on earth. So what gave birth to the poem Birches? Again, a very strong sense of emotion about his nostalgic childhood days. He remembers those beautiful childhood days when he, like other rural boys, was a passionate swinger of the birch trees. Not having modern facilities to sports, boys in the rural area invented their own sports, and birch swinging was quite a popular one, it seems. When Robert Frost is reminded of his childhood days, that he would swing in the air and take a plunge from the birch, then he would be free, liberated. In his adulthood, as he is surrounded by many, many responsibilities, as he is weighed down by stresses and anxieties, his mind wants to take flight, just the way he would take flight on the branches of the birch. In the air for some time, free and liberated, yet sensible and careful enough to come down on earth and take up what he had left behind. In adulthood, what he means is that to take up his responsibilities once again. After all, it is always a welcome thing to feel stress-free, to lose yourself for a while, to feel liberated and happy. And who doesn't want to be? Probably that is why we have so many sources of entertainment. That is why people go on hikes. That is why people do bungee jumping. That is why children swing on swings. That feeling of liberation is always priceless. It refreshes us. It takes us temporarily into a world of liberty, yet brings us down safely. So now, let us begin with the text. I want to stop here. So let's start with the text. And to begin with, I shall read the text out to you. Here given in the picture is a beautiful picture of birch trees. You can see most of them rising skywards. They're all rising towards the sky. In fact, let me zoom the image for you a little. Yes. So if you look closely, you shall see that the tree trunks are rising towards the sky. And most of the tree trunks are quite delicate to look at. They are not thick tree trunks. They are slender trunks that move towards the sky. And yet there is one birch that you can see forming an arch because it is bent. These are the bended tree trunks that, or birch tree trunks, that the author, Robert Frost, is talking about. So, let's go back. Right. When I see birches bend to left and right, across the lines of straighter, darker trees. I like to think some boy's been swinging them. So let us look at the first few lines here. When I see birches bent left and right. Here, right in the picture, you have all birch trees going skywards, yet one of them can be seen bent to one side. When I see birches bend to left and right, across the lines of straight, darker trees. In the background, you can see the straighter, darker trees rising skywards. I like to think some boy's been swinging them. The poet likes to imagine that this bend or this arch that has come about is because some boy has been rigorously swinging on these birch trunks. Let me tell you here that birch trees are very commonly found in the cold regions of America. Across the lines of straight, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. He likes to think that it is some boy who has been climbing and reaching the top branches and then flinging himself, due to which the branches come down, dropping the child back on the ground. So let's look what more he has to say. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I hope you understand now, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. Generally, the reason for most of the birch trees becoming bent or arched is ice storms. When ice storms come, they bring heavy loads of ice, and the reason we shall know further. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. Just a moment. So what does the poet say here? He wants you to imagine that you are looking at a wood or forest full of birch trees that on a sunny winter morning after a shower of rain, they click upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored. As the stir cracks and crazes their enamel. The poet further says that many a times even you must have watched a birch forest, and in that particular forest or woods full of birch trees, you would have noticed that after a heavy thunderstorm and then followed by rain, when the sun comes out, you shall find that the snow that was earlier packed upon the branches, thick or thin branches of the birch tree, have now turned into ice. It's as if each and every branch, each and every twig of the birch tree is wearing a glove of ice. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises. And when the breeze comes to stir them, to move them, these branches, thick or thin, in their movement, loaded with solid ice, click with each other, just like the clinking of two glasses. जब कांच आपस में टकराता है तो उसमें से क्लिंक क्लिंक की आवाज आती है. उसी तरह जो बर्फ इन शाखों के ऊपर जम गई है, इन डालियों के ऊपर, पतली पतली ट्विग्स के ऊपर जम गई है, उससे क्या होता है, उससे वो जब आपस में टकराती हैं तो कांच जैसी आवाज उनमें से आती है. और देखने में भी ऐसा लगता है जैसे कि हर डाल के ऊपर कांच का एक कवर चढ़ा हुआ हो. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored. Turn many-colored. Many-colored over here refers to they form a prism. They form a prism of light. And the light is of many colors, as the stir cracks and crazes their enamel. So why does this happen? When the branches gently touch each other, the ice starts to crack. The enamel, the smooth surface on top, creates a lot of cracks. When the sunlight reaches these cracks, they burst out in many colored prisms of light. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed their crystal cells. You see, what is the difference between a crystal and a glass? A glass may not have many colors, but if crystal is kept in a certain light at a certain angle, it will create a prism of colors. So, the glassy ice now starts to look like shiny crystal. Crystal, which is reflecting light of many colors. Why? Because the sun rays hit the branches and the ice deflects all these colors. As the breeze rises and turns many-colored, as the stir cracks and crazes their enamel, soon the sun's warmth makes them shed their crystal cells. As the sun rises higher in the sky and the temperature rises slightly after the snowstorm, after the rain, what happens? The ice that was earlier solidified on these branches now begins to melt. As it melts, the ice loses its grip on the branches and with a great shattering sound fall upon the earth. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed their crystal cells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. Shattering, breaking into tiny pieces, breaking into innumerable tiny pieces, innumerable tiny pieces. जैसे कि कांच चकनाचूर होके धरती पर गिर गया हो. That is what shattering over here refers to. And avalanching. What is an avalanche? Well, an avalanche is again when on the high peaks of mountain laden with a lot of snow, suddenly a huge piece of snow starts falling downwards. As it falls down, what happens? It gains momentum and it gains a lot of mass. With it, it carries down a lot of ice. Sometimes this snow and this ice start forming a big snowball. In other cases, it starts to come down like a huge cascade of ice. और वो avalanche इसलिए कहलाता है because it is not small. It is massive. It is a small thing that begins on top of a mountain, yet when it comes down, by the time it reaches the lower hills, it is disastrous. So he finds a lot of similarity between the shattering of these crystals and avalanching. From the higher reaches of the trees, as these icicles melt and start dropping down with a shattering sound, there seem to be not one, not two, but as if they are a whole avalanche of icy snow is coming down. झम से वो ज़मीन पर गिरने लगते हैं. On the snow crust which is on the surface of the earth. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away, you'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. What does he say here? What do they form? They form mounds of snow and ice that just a few moments ago were up there on the treetops, up there on the other branches, reflecting a lot of colorful lights, just like crystal would do. But now what has happened? Now they all fall down with a thud, and so many trees are letting their icicles loose as they come down. It seems as if it was an avalanche. All this avalanche collecting on the surface of the woods, the ground, forming heaps, mounds. And what does it seem? You'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. You would feel that in case the sky had a roof, the sky's roof in itself had crashed down on earth. This is what it means till now. So let us take a quick reading of what we've done till now. Right. Loaded with, well, we have to go a little back. When I see birches bend, left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them. Loaded with ice, a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click up upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored as the stir cracks. What does stir over here mean? Movement. Movement due to breeze. Due to breeze. Movement due to breeze. As the stir cracks and crazes their enamel, the smooth surface, soon the sun's warmth makes them shed their crystal shells. Shed, drop. What does shed mean? Drop. Soon the warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away, you'd think. The inner dome of heaven had fallen. Inner dome, roof of heaven had fallen. Heaven over here, sky, refers to sky. You think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. So with this, we come to the end of part 1, and we shall meet in part 2.